a little bit past noon Eastern time, and we're excited to do this Facebook Live today as part of our Optimal Bio live broadcast. Because we chose noon time, I guess that's probably appropriate since we're going to talk to Tylar Brannon, the CEO of Optimal Bio, and also our wellness director at Optimal Bio as well. And wellness obviously centers around diet and conditions and other types of things that Optimal Bio does to help the patient become healthier. And of course, it's noon time, so a lot of us are probably hungry at this point in time, and we're thinking about our traditional lunches of sandwiches and chips and salads loaded with a bunch of stuff and what have you. So I thought today would be a great day for us to reintroduce our wellness program and to have a little Q&A with Tylar Brannon. So since it is lunch time at this point in time, and people everywhere are hopefully even with COVID, choosing to go out to lunch and what have you. If you were gonna, kind of recommend, some sort of typical menu, for lunch, if people are still eating lunch, what would you recommend?
I think the most important thing about thinking about food is that it's medicine. So whatever you put in your mouth, it's either going to hurt or help you. So when you think about lunch, you want something that gives you energy and will sustain you for the rest of the day, especially if you are, going back to work, if you're taking care of your kids, you don't want that crash. And carbohydrates is what's going to give you that crash. So a great lunch would be a salad with some protein, some healthy fats, avocado, olive oil, and then if you want some whole carbohydrates, you could put like a sweet potato, but really whole foods is what I would recommend. But definitely making sure that you get protein and the healthy fats to give you energy and not have a crash in about 2 hours.
And when you're doing that, there's always that, always kind of enticed to maybe have that sweet tea compared to the unsweet tea, or, that soda. Even though it may not be a ton of calories, we're just going to have one. What's the downside to that?
Yeah, and we had put up last week, if you have any questions, let us know. And a lot of the questions had to do with inflammation, and sugar causes inflammation in your body. So not only are you going to have that crash in 2 hours, or it might cause you to be hungry because your body, when it absorbs sugar, it gives it a signal to your cells that you are still hungry or that you're going to crave more sweets. So it's not only just like, oh, it's 100 calories, it's actually what is it doing to your cells? And sugar causes inflammation. It's actually one of the leading causes of chronic diseases. So that is, you have to think more about just not the calories, but it's what it's actually doing to your body as a whole.
And on that note, and taking some of the questions from the audience, in addition to not eating sugar since it causes inflammation, what are some of the other foods that you could eat? As you mentioned earlier, it's foods about medicine that you could eat to help reduce inflammation.
So I think the key about inflammation is two things to avoid would be gluten and dairy, and then things to add to your diet. So think of what comes from the ground. So nothing from a box, whether it be fruits, blueberries, pineapple is really good for inflammation, avocado, nuts, so almonds, walnuts, cashews. And talking about nuts, you have to remember a peanut is not a nut. It's technically a legume. So your body will absorb it as a carbohydrate turns into sugar. Salmon, and then when you talk about oils, avocado oil, olive oil, oils like vegetable oil or soybean oil, grapeseed oil, it causes inflammation. So just think about, just natural foods. I don't want people to think I don't know what to eat, it's too stressful, or there's so much out there, and there is. So if you really just go back to whole foods coming from the ground, it's a really good place to start regarding inflammation.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that about peanuts, and also, a lot of us, get our coffee and we'll throw in some half and half and some milk. What are simple substitutes for that make your coffee taste just as good?
Yeah, so the thing about dairy is when you're consuming it, there's so many added extra hormones in the cow, and then you are going to drink the the hormones as well as additives. So a easy, simple fix would be adding almond milk or coconut milk. And if you want to froth it, it gives it that texture. And I do not like coconut. It's not my favorite, but coconut milk in coffee does not give it a coconut taste. It's more of just a milky taste. So I would add those, even cinnamon you can add to your coffee.
Great. So in addition to that, let's assume we're doing really well on our diet. We're going to kind of jump all over the map here, but let's talk about working out for a second. What are some of your favorite body workouts?
Yeah, I think any type of working out is great. It's so key to keep your body moving for your mental health, physical, and for aging. If you stop moving, your body's going to slowly age. And so one of the best anti-aging is working out. So it's really important, I think, to find what's the best, like what do you like to work out? Because I don't want people to think like, oh, I hate working out, I don't want to do this. You have to enjoy it to keep it part of your lifestyle. So I love HIIT workouts, Peloton, spinning, running, walking, Pure Barre. And I think it really just depends on you. So are you, do you have Hashimoto's? Do you have other situations that you're working on too? Because that really will depend on the workout that you should be doing. For example, if you're trying to reduce your inflammation in your body, you might want to do a lower intensity workout instead of like HIIT. So those are just really anything that gets you moving that you enjoy, but it really is so important to work out, 3 to 5 times a week.
By the way, my apologies. I'm new to Facebook Live and I realized that I should have been checking the comments. So we're going to go back to diet. So 2 things. One, you hear a lot these days about olive oil not really being pure virgin olive oil. It basically converts more to vegetable oil, which isn't good for you. So if you're going to be cooking and you're also going to be recommending, so first question, from a cooking standpoint, what's the best oil to cook with? And secondly, if it is olive oil, if you're going to say that, then what is the best olive oil to buy?
Yeah, so before they said that olive oil could only go to certain temperatures when cooking, but in recent studies, they've actually said that's not true. You can cook with it and it doesn't turn into vegetable oil. So I would recommend olive oil, avocado oil, or coconut. But what is key in anything you buy, look at the ingredients, because you just want it to say ingredients olive oil. Because so many things, even if they say organic or natural or non-GMO, they add additives, and that's where the problems arise. And for olive oil specifically, as well as avocado oil, you want a glass bottle that's dark. That's what keeps the olive oil in its purest state.
So light can break down the olive oil.
Exactly.
Got it. So how about lentils? You mentioned a lot of other foods before. Any thoughts on lentils?
Yeah, lentils is a carb, as most of you probably know. So it is from the ground, so it's not a refined carb. So I would say it's great to have part of your diet. It's full of fiber, but it just shouldn't be part of your everyday dinner. So I would say, 3 times a week, throw it on in a soup, salad, but it is a carb. So that's just something to remember, but it is not refined. So your body won't, completely turn into sugar while it's absorbing it.
So let's talk a little bit about fasting. Obviously you and Dr. Brannon and others have recommended, a 12-hour fast, 16-hour fast, and now we're even talking about a 20-hour fast at this point in time. So why don't we just focus on what's the difference really between 16 and 20 hours and how does that affect you?
So fasting, I think people need to remember, it's very important. Everything with wellness is very individually based. So 16 is the goal you should reach, because that's when the effects of fasting start taking place. So of course people think fasting is weight loss, and of course that's great, but the important part about fasting is that it gives the time to regenerate, and it gives your body time to metabolize the food that you've already eaten. So with the cells, it will get rid of the damaged cells that can cause aging, different diseases. So that's why it's so important to fast. So the 16 hours is the benchmark that you should do. 20 hours, the longer you go, the more time your body can do all those things that I just mentioned and really truly heal and get the benefits of fasting. But again, it is very individually based. For example, some women, and depending on the month, they shouldn't be fasting they shouldn't be fasting, or they should be fasting 20 hours. I know for me, 16 to 18 is where that's where I feel good. But of course, some days I'll try to push it to 20 just to see, but that might be once a month. So it really depends on how you feel. But you think as the longer you go, the more benefits, but you shouldn't be doing, fasting 20 hours every day, because your body does need nutrients and the energy. So I would say benchmark 16. If you want to throw in some 20 hours, that's great. But it's not like if you do 16 instead of 20, you're not going to get the benefits of fasting.
Yeah, I tried the 16 hours and found that after a couple of days, as long as I was basically moving in the morning. So even if I was working, I try to walk around a little bit, drank more tea probably than I normally need to do. But if you're just sitting there stationary, you're going to feel hungry. But if you're, getting up, walking around, moving around, or if you have the freedom to, be outside and do some things, and the day goes fast, and you realize, boy, I wasn't that hungry. So for me, at least personally, if I kept moving around, it didn't bother me I didn't really miss the food, I guess, is probably what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. So many times we eat because we're bored. We're not really hungry. So if you just keep moving, especially if you fast in the morning, if you're working out, keep busy, then it's already 12 o'clock and you're like, oh, wait, I really wasn't hungry.
So let's go the opposite now. What about snacking? Should people avoid snacking?
Yes, they should. But going back kind of to the why you should fast. So in order for your body to digest your food, it's called the migrating motor complex. It takes about 3 to 4 hours to digest one meal. And there's 4 phases of it. And if you eat before that 4 hour, 3 hour mark, then your body starts over. And so when it's during that phase, it will just be able to metabolize some sugars and not get into the fat burning, as well as then the rest of your food that you haven't used for energy, now it's just staying in your body, which is technically toxic because you want to get it out. So the snacking really just slows your body down of metabolizing your food, getting it through your digestive system, which can cause issues, whether it be bloating, headaches, migraines. But so the snacking really just puts your body into over mode that is always trying to digest food, and it's never giving it the full time to digest and to, be ready for the next meal. And then your cortisol always spikes. So even if you have an apple, because you're like, oh, it's a small snack, that your cortisol is still spiking, and then it's still starting over. So I would say no to snacking.
On that note, and going back to dairy real quick, we mentioned before, almond milk and coconut milk as being good substitutes to put into your coffee, for example, or to drink. In addition to those alternatives, what are your thoughts on dairy-free milks and vegan cheeses and some of the other, non-dairy products that are out there right now?
Yeah, so again, with these non-dairy or substitutes, is really you want to find the right brand with the least amount of ingredients, because just because it's vegan, they put so many chemicals and so many added substitutes that it's not healthy. Now you're just because it's vegan, it's not doing anything good for you. So that when you want to look at coconut milk, almond milk, a vegan cheese, just look at the brand and just turn it and look at the ingredients. You want the least amount, and if there's some chemical you don't know, I would say put it back. So some of the brands I really like are Malk and Khalifa, because they have the least amount of ingredients and no carcinogens, which can cause cancer. And a lot of vegan products have that. So it's really important to watch. And then another vegan cheese that I really like is called BioLife, because again, there's no chemicals and there's small amount of ingredients, but you should still eat it, very sparingly. I wouldn't say that to be a part of your everyday.
Yeah, what's the rule of thumb? No package should contain more than 3 ingredients, and you should be able to recognize all 3 ingredients. And if you don't, put it back on the shelf.
Exactly, because there's, they spend millions of marketing to try to, for healthy, and they think it's healthy because there might be a green label or this or that, but exactly, to look at the ingredients.
Getting back to gluten real quick, we talked a little bit about that before, but the benefits of avoiding gluten in your diet.
Yeah, so gluten, a little history lesson. In the Roman Empire, it was used as glue. So I don't think anyone should be eating glue. We're not walking around eating Elmer's. So it used to bring things together. So gluten is one, it's usually in processed food. It's usually a high carb and it causes inflammation. Inflammation causes so many different diseases. People think it's causing type 2 diabetes, type 3 diabetes. So it's really key to avoid, and your body doesn't know how to digest it as well. So some people might be less prone to having issues with it, but overall it is very causing inflammation. It's not doing anything good for your body. And the thing about gluten is, if you're like, well, I only eat gluten sometimes, it takes 90 days for your gluten to get out of your body. So if you're really trying to avoid it, and even if you have like a bite of something, it's starting over that 90 days. Especially people with thyroid issues should really avoid gluten.
Man, I had no idea that gluten was glue back in the Roman Empire, and I guess that makes sense. If it takes 90 days, it's basically sticking to you for all that time.
Right.
So we talked a lot about different types of foods or what have you. I know in the past, tofu was a pretty popular, vegan, option. Thoughts on tofu and where does that fit into the diet, if anywhere?
Yeah, so tofu, I personally do not eat it because of the soy content, but there are some places for it. So I think if you do organic tofu and just again like the vegan cheeses, if you eat it a couple of times, it's fine. Some people really like it and say since it's a natural soy, it's fine. But I would not say it should be a main staple of your diet because of the soy. And soy can turn into the negative estrogen in your body, which we come into contact with every single day. So that's just another entrance for that.
Yeah, can you expand upon the soy a little bit more?
Yeah, so soy is like edamame too, is created from soy, and soy turns into estrogen into our body, but it turns into the bad estrogen. And we also can get it in plastics, in our water, our food supply, and it can cause estrogen dominance, which females and males have estrogen, which people don't realize, and then females are supposed to have more testosterone than estrogen. So it can cause, anxiety, depression, brain fog, because it will imbalance our hormones.
Yeah, because I know soy was super hot and popular, maybe in the early 2000s and late 90s, and I guess as we've done more research on it, to your point, that's what they found.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy what things do to your body.
So let's talk about some fun stuff. Healthy dessert options to fulfill a sweet tooth.
Yes. So I'm a huge fan of Simple Mills. They have cookies that you can just buy off the shelf. They have breads that you can cook, again, because it's the least amount of ingredients in it, and it's all organic. Who Kitchen, wonderful chocolate. What else? So I just think, because we're all going to have a sweet tooth, right? So it's might as well have like a piece of chocolate, whatever, because I feel like if you keep like craving something, then you might binge on it. So I would just say, just find the least amount of ingredients. And of course, like if one day you want to have a piece of key lime pie, live life, but just really, and then another candy company that I love is called Smart Sweets. And there's only 3 carbs in it, and none of the alcohol sugars that a lot of low carb candies have that can cause digestion issues. So those are my go-to. But I always think a good piece of chocolate, really nails the sweet tooth.
Yeah, if you're going to choose that chocolate, it should be the dark chocolate too, right? Because it's gluten-free and it also doesn't have any dairy in it as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and they say it helps your heart. So.
Oh, probably that and a glass of red wine, right?
Right? I mean, what's better than that? Just kidding, guys.
Okay, so how about sleep? It seems like the entire country doesn't sleep the way that they want to. I don't know too many people that wake up every single morning and say, wow, I killed it last night. I had a great sleep, and they're ready for the day. So how many hours of sleep do you recommend getting? And are there some tips and techniques that, one could take to, help them sleep better at night?
Yeah. So 7 to 8 is the optimal range, and more studies come out and show the importance of sleep is even might be more important than a healthy diet and working out, because if you, anywhere below 7 hours, your cortisol keeps spiking throughout the day. And if your cortisol is spiking, you can't burn fat. And then your cells haven't had time to regenerate, because you have to think when you're sleeping is the time that gives your body time to really fully relax and be able to regenerate cells, heal the cells that might be, either dying or kind of like injured. And then, so 7 to 8 hours. And then, especially if you don't get sleep, then you're tired, you might eat more, really goes on. But the cellular level is the cortisol. It makes a huge difference if you don't get those 7 to 8. And I'm such a night owl, I could stay up forever. But ever since I started doing a morning workout, I know if I stay up, like that's going to be brutal. So if you're having trouble, going to sleep at a decent time, whether you're distracted or you want to stay up watching a Netflix show, scheduling a workout, I think, is a great way to make sure that you're in bed, because, workout's going to go better. It's going to be easier to wake up if you've gotten that sleep. Also, turning off your phone, TV, at least an hour before, because that blue light will really keep your mind awake a lot longer. And I know a lot of people probably have a TV in their bedroom, but I would say one of the best ways is not to have a TV in your bedroom.
Yeah, I listened to some podcasts, and they talked a lot about, not everybody has a Kindle these days, it seems like. And, they were like, everybody reads, most people read before they go to sleep. And, but if you can avoid that blue light, and, try to wind yourself down, it's almost like you're preparing for a workout. You're going to prepare to go to sleep as well. Another tip, I have no idea. I tried it actually, and it seemed to work okay for a while. A friend of mine always takes a shower a half an hour before he goes to bed. And then his body's clean, feels refreshed, hits the sack, so to speak, and goes to sleep. And I think Dr. Brannon also had talked a little bit about taking magnesium before going to sleep as well. So I don't know how you feel about that, but that potentially could be another option as well.
Yeah, people really like magnesium for sleeping and for migraines. And I think it really will, obviously supplements does help, but I really think making lifestyle changes too is the root cause of many things, especially sleep.
Another question from our audience, and in this case, it's about sodium. Now, we've always heard sodium is bad for you. Now we've heard that your body obviously needs salt. So is salt different than sodium? That's probably the first question I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, so when I saw that question pop up, when I was a kid, we were not allowed to have salt. So there's never salt on the table. It was like not added. So now this day, I don't really like salty foods because I wasn't used to eating it. But so the problem with salt is not the sodium, it's the salt that we were eating, like table salt, was ripped of all the nutrients and was bleached. So that's why it got the bad rap. So like a Himalayan salt, which is like all the rave these days, it actually is good because it has the nutrients and the minerals back in it. So you shouldn't avoid sodium, you should just buy the correct sodium or the correct salt.
And then cooking with that too is no issue?
Yeah, which is, I was honestly just talking about it with Dr. Brannon the other day, because he loves his salt. And I'm like, remember, I could never eat salt, and now I really don't like it. So yeah, if you get the Himalayan, because it's filled with the minerals. And so you actually do need the sodium, especially, the original Gatorade, not what it is today. It was created with potassium and sodium because that's what our body needed to not be dehydrated. So it really is the minerals of what it was is what's key. So keep buying the Himalayan salt that's, organic, and look at the ingredients. Make sure there's nothing added or it's bleached. A lot of things are bleached. You don't want that. I think
also the Irish sea salt, is another one that's similar to the Himalayan sea salt. And, that comes with a little pink tinge to it, but it obviously tastes just like salt. So I think that probably with sodium too, if you can avoid eating out of a box, you're going to get less sodium intake overall, because, as maybe you can elaborate on this, it's true that a lot of these packaged foods are loaded with sodium, and you're not even you're tasting it, but you have no idea how much you're actually getting. Is that correct?
Exactly. Like anything in the package boxes or even eating out, because you have to think anything that's on a shelf, they're putting anything they can to preserve it. So sodium does preserve it. So yes, it's a lot of the bad sodium or the salt that you don't want to preserve it. And as you said, you're eating it without even tasting it because our bodies are just getting used to it. So that's why it really is so important to try to avoid foods out of a box as much as you can, because your body starts just getting used to those flavors and you're not even realize what you're ingesting.
So then if you were, let's say, traveling on the road and you're going out to dinner 2 or 3 times a week, and then you come home and you got to cook a meal, on that fourth night, and you like salt, should you cook with salt still, or should you just give yourself a break and try to, knowing that you've basically been taking in more sodium than you should have been, for the last 3 days? What would you recommend on that?
I would suggest taking a break. Just giving your body, a break from the salt, from the sodium. You might feel a little puffy if you've been eating out. So I would try to take a break, and it gives your taste buds a chance to kind of reset, because if you avoid some foods, your body's not going to crave certain things, especially sugar. Very quick, your body realizes, like, wait, that was like, if you just take a break from sugar just for 2 weeks, and then you try to, eat something that you would have already eaten, you're like, oh, wow, that's so sweet. I actually don't want that.
Another note, just going to switch topics off diet for a minute, because we had another question from the audience. What do you recommend for mild rosacea? I always butcher that name,
Yeah.
so hopefully you know what I'm talking about.
No, so it's funny that I saw that question, and it goes back to the inflammation foods and avoiding dairy and gluten. So rosacea is caused from inflammation. And so first 2 things I would say, do not eat gluten and do not eat dairy. People think that is what's causing rosacea. And then adding into the foods that reduce inflammation. So vitamin D is a great supplement, but you can also, get it, as well as fish oil is also great for rosacea. But just think about the foods that decrease inflammation. So leafy greens, blueberries, raspberries, olive oils, avocado, pineapple. But I think the key for rosacea is definitely avoiding, gluten, dairy, caffeine, and alcohol.
So quick lightning round on a couple of topics. Obviously, this has been very helpful, hopefully, to our audience today. But if you have to have a quick snack in the morning for breakfast, let's say, should you go Cliff Bar or should you go Kind Bar?
Oh gosh, that is a hard one. I would say a Kind Bar. A Cliff Bar has probably twice the amount of carbs, so I'd go with Kind.
How about a traditional cup of coffee versus Jolt or Red Bull?
Coffee. Okay. Oh yeah, we could go on and on. Jolt and Red Bull, it's so bad for you. Your poor heart.
How about a traditional cup of coffee or a wonderful cup of Earl Grey tea?
They're great. It's natural, caffeine. I really don't think so, because I'm coffee through and through. But they're both natural. Don't add anything to it. I think it's good.
And then if you do, everybody seems to always think that the banana, in the morning is a great, healthy way to start the day. Is that true? Number one, and number two, if it's not, what would be a nice fruit substitute for banana?
I would say no to a banana because of the sugar content, especially in the morning. That's your first meal. So your cortisol is going to spike and you might be hungrier quicker. So if you really do want a banana, you could add an almond butter to it, or fruits. I would love berries because it's low on the glycemic index and it won't spike your cortisol as high.
All right, that's enough for the lightning round right now. I don't want to test you too much. We're going to conclude this broadcast in a second, but before we do, Tyler, any takeaways that you want to give the audience?
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, please email us, call us. We love talking about wellness, and that's why we really wanted to jump into it, because of course, we love hormones and that's what we specialize in, but without wellness, you will not get the full benefits of, your hormone treatment, but really enjoying life, because health is key. If you don't feel well, if you don't have your energy levels, it's going to make other things harder. And so, I just want people to remember that food is medicine, and it is break it down, make it simple. There's a lot of information out there, but if you really just get the key foundations, you can really incorporate it into your life.
This has been a great 30 minutes today, and thank you for your time. And as Tyler had mentioned, if you need more information or you want to talk to somebody, please feel free to contact us at Optimal Bio. And until next time, everybody be safe, be healthy, and enjoy life. Thank you.
Thanks for joining, guys.